Brent crept forward. Something was moving. Coming around a corner, he found a man chained up within the depths of a cavern. Even in his decrepit state, Brent saw a wicked look in the man's eyes. On the man's shoulders writhed two serpents. They hissed and fought against their bindings. The adventurer braced himself as one serpent slipped its shackles and lunged at him. Welcome to Mythical Phylogeny Adventures. I'm your guide, Jason. Today, we turn our attention to an unfortunate king known as Zahhak. Let's see the dark fate tied to this man. Born al-Zahhak ibn Qiz, he was a Yemeni king and ruled over Babel, what is modern-day Iraq. He comes from Arabian legends, from Faradushi's Shahnameh, the Book of Kings, described as handsome and clever, but a poor judge of character, and thus easily manipulated. But the young Zahhak was not innocent, as he killed his father, King Murdas, so he could usurp the throne of Mesopotamia. Mind you, he did do this under a devil's advice. During the coronation celebration, the devil entered the court and served as the chef. This was Ahriman, a devil from the Zoroastrian religion. Unknown about the chef's true nature, King Zahhak offered him a reward. But the devil only asked to lay a blessing on each of the king's shoulders. With a kiss, he laid a curse. Two serpents sprang forth, threatening all around him, including the king. If the snake was cut off, it would just grow back in an instant. No healer or cleric could remove them. Disguised as a doctor, the devil returns. His advice is wicked. To keep the serpents from killing the king, he recommends a stew made from 2 human brains to be fed to the serpents each day. Each day, 2 men would be called forth and sacrificed to the snakes. The minister of the court was more righteous. Each day, he would make a decision. He would spare one of the men, having him flee the country with a few goats. The young man would never tell his family, but would be smuggled out of the nation. The other young man and a ram would be sacrificed to make the stew for the serpents. Now Zahhak ruled for over 1,000 years, and did much in that time. Among his actions was defeating the king of Persia, Jumshid. He at first appeared as a savior and protector of the people, but that soon changed as the sacrifices built up. One night, King Zahhak had a prophetic dream. His rule would come to an end with the actions of a boy named Feridun, carrying a mace made with a cow's head. His mother, Faranak, would escape and raise him in secret all before his birth. During this time, a blacksmith named Keva, an elder and leader amongst his village, would start a rebellion. Keva had lost nearly all of his sons due to the king's snakes. His last son was selected for sacrifice, but was offered to be spared if he would help promote King Zahhak as a gentle and benevolent king, to help quash any chance of Feridun raising up. Eventually, Keva would lead a group that would meet up with Feridun and together would overthrow King Zahhak. Feridun is warned by an angel to not kill Zahhak. When he strikes Zahhak with his cow-headed mace, an insect crawls from the king's head. For now, the king had become a vessel of death and disease. If he was ever to die, all that would be released, causing widespread death and destruction. Instead, he was tied up with a rope made from a lion's skin, before being chained up in a cave on Mount Damavad, where he was to remain for the rest of time. That is a story that many of you have probably never heard of. There is much to see here. We see how someone can be manipulated and become the source of darkness. He became the embodiment of all evil. So, how did he live and rule for over 1,000 years? In many ancient stories, there is an attempt to deify kings, to be more godlike, to justify their rule. Yes, we do see this, but a more likely option is that the curse is what sustained him, fueled by the sacrifices that were made. And how many was that? Well, 2 sacrifices a day, times 365 days, for 730 men a year, for 1,000 years, or a total of 730,000 men over his reign as king. Now that is a lot of people, but let's look at how it would influence the population. The estimated population of the Persian Empire was between 17 to 35 million people. So 730,000 men is a lot, but over 1,000 years? It isn't that many when you think about it. You would lose more people in a small-scale skirmish in wars. But we noticed something with Kava. He lost all but his last son, who was even being put up for sacrifice. It seems that the sacrifices weren't completely random, more targeted, focusing on subjugating dissenters, a common tactic to get people to cooperate. Now, how much of Zahhak's actions are his own nature? First, the curse's influence. Yes, he was influenced and altered by the curse. We see this in the state he became at the end, a vessel for curses and plagues. We know he wasn't perfect to begin with. He killed his own father and offered a chef whatever he wanted, without knowing who he was. Yeah, he had issues even before the curse. There is something interesting here. King Zahhak became a container for some of the worst things imaginable. Doesn't that sound familiar? Say Pandora's box? It is possible that the two have a shared origin in another and much older myth. Perhaps, maybe we'll figure out what that story was one day. Unfortunately, there is no way of knowing if the snakes and Zahhak shared blood and nutrients. This should work like a parasitic infection, and his immune system should be trying to fight off the snakes. But they should survive using their regenerative powers. Yet, they can't damage the king's body, else they would perish. It does seem that they do have their own head, brain, digestive, and respiratory systems. But it will have an issue with removing waste. Urine could be filtered into Zahhak's body, but not feces. So either it has an opening near the shoulder and leaks over Zahhak, or it is depositing it into the king, thus being the source of the plagues within Zahhak's body. So, how would you defeat King Zahhak? The first issue is he is a king. That means he has armies that you'll need to handle. To deal with them, we are looking at large-scale warfare. Bring your own army. This will be a lengthy conflict. Set up supply lines and amass support. Before starting the rebellion, lay the groundwork. The easiest recruits will be those who have had their sons taken. But you could get those who were saved to come to your aid. Don't rush this part. Battling armies will get complicated. There are many factors which contribute to victory, from army size, terrain usage, available weapons, and food supply. There isn't a definitive answer here. But there are a few openings. King Zahhak was caught by surprise with the rebellion. He was out of the castle when it began, and cut him off from his treasure and disrupt the chain of command. This is something you should work at doing. Now what about fighting King Zahhak directly? Once you get past the armies and guards, and it's just you and him. Zahhak is human. He'll put on armor and carry weapons, most likely a shield, but his shoulders won't be covered. but we'll have the two snakes. Now, it isn't stated whether the snakes are venomous or not. They may struggle to constrict and wrap around you due to being limited in motion by being bound to the kink. If it can, having spikes on your armor will inflict harm to it. But if it tries and bites you, plate and gambeson will be best. The fangs could get through chainmail. A shield is another good option. Snakes seem to have a healing power, similar to that of the Hydra. And that could open up a weakness. When Heracles removed one of the Hydra's heads, he would have his assistant sear it closed with fire. There is a chance that the same trick could work here. It would take experimentation to find out. Good luck testing that. Now, a mace isn't the best option. Against the snakes, a long weapon is best. A greatsword or spear will offer you the reach to get in and strike King Zahhak. There is no point in cutting off the snakes. They would just respawn instantly. But don't kill King Zahhak. If he dies, then the plagues come forth. You need to bring him down without killing him. That will make things a little more difficult, but not insane. A large and thick net can entangle the snakes and Zahhak. But if you don't have a net, I have an alternative. A large and heavy blanket or canvas for a tent. Use a group to wrap around the king and snakes to hold them in place. Yet, if they have a sword or a dagger, they can cut themselves out, but that could take time. Time that you could get chains and shackles to prevent any movement. Magically, you have options. Any school can harm the king, but ice should limit the snakes. Reptiles don't care for the cold, and it will make them sluggish. Sure, warmth can spread from Zahhak, but from the tail end up. There are more. A good sleep spell will put them on the ground, or a paralysis spell. Oh, there are plenty of crowd control options you can employ. But did Zahhak need the sacrifices? No. What is stopping his people from putting the snake heads in a thick canvas sack and bind it down at the neck? Use chains to hold the snakes behind the king's back. Yes, they should have been able to subdue the two snakes. King Zahhak is a strange foe. He is human, except for the cursed snakes protruding from his shoulders. But what makes him difficult is the fact that you can't slay him. You need to bring him in alive. But all we're dealing with is a pair of snakes and a human. That is why I'm giving King Zahhak a 3 of 10 for difficulty in a fight. What do you get for defeating this king? Adoration from the locals who've had their sons taken from them. But those that survived could be reunited. Who knows? You may become the new king for your efforts. I don't know if you'd enjoy that. Surely there will be a new group of rebels from the old regime to handle. Now, be sure that King Zahhak is secured, and no one is going to find him. But there might have been a way to cure the king. Remember the source of the curse? A devil? What happens if the devil is slain? Could it have broken the curse? Maybe. So what about another option? Normal healers and clerics couldn't remove the snakes, but maybe others could. Angels are mentioned, so could one of them deal with the snakes? Divine weapon to remove the snakes? This might be a solution, but finding divine aid isn't always the easiest. Brent swung his axe as the snake lunged at him. It fell to the ground, and Brent sucked in the air. Another snake burst forth. Fear took hold of Brent. He didn't think about it, but he swung his axe down on the figure chained up. It left a gash in the man's chest, and a swarm of insects spilled forth. Panicking, Brent fled the cave. The tale of King Zahhak is meant as a warning about how anyone can be corrupted. His fate is the result of him being easily coerced. Thank you for watching, adventurers. Please return next week for Typhon. Until then, I'll see you on the roads.